The moment she stepped into my living room, I saw greed dripping from her smile. "I'm pregnant," she announced, "and he pays for my luxury condo with your money." Upstairs, my baby was asleep, innocent, while downstairs, the ugliest truth clawed its way out. Rage burned, shame crushed me, but under it all, something darker sparked. Their arrogance, their hunger for power, their insatiable greed, this wasn't love. It was war disguised as desire. And as she smirked, flaunting her stolen life, I knew one thing: their sins would become their downfall, and I would be the one to set the trap. When Olivia left my house that night, her perfume lingering in the air like poison, I sat frozen in the silence. The words she had spat at me replayed in my mind on an endless loop. "I'm pregnant, and he pays for my luxury condo with your money." I had felt the floor shift beneath me, but the collapse hadn't begun that night. The cracks had been forming long before, silent and invisible, until suddenly everything I thought I knew about my marriage began to rot from the inside out. In the beginning, Ethan was perfect, or at least that's what I wanted to believe. He was successful, charming, the kind of man who seemed to have it all together. When we got married, I thought I had stepped into the life I'd always dreamed of: a safe home, a steady future, a partner who would protect me. He used to whisper, "Don't worry, Amelia, I'll take care of everything." And I let him. I let him handle the bills, the accounts, the taxes, because wasn't that what good husbands did? But soon, his care became control. He locked the finances under his name until the credit cards in my wallet were mere props, dependent on his approval. It wasn't obvious at first. It started with little comments that seemed harmless, but cut deeper than I realized. When I wanted to buy something for myself, Ethan would shake his head and say, "Do you really need that? Don't you think it's a bit wasteful?" When I asked why I couldn't see our full bank statements, he laughed and told me I was too sensitive, too anxious. "You always imagine the worst, Amelia. Relax, let me handle it." And I did. I forced myself to believe I was paranoid. Gaslighting works like that. You begin to doubt your own eyes, your own instincts, until you start to think maybe you really are losing your mind. But then came the phone. It was late one night when Ethan fell asleep on the couch, his phone buzzing against the coffee table. I glanced at it, not intending to snoop, but the screen lit up just long enough for me to see 3 words that would haunt me. "Our baby is..." And then it vanished, swallowed by the lock screen. I froze, my chest tightening, my heart slamming against my ribs. "Our baby." The phrase repeated in my mind like a curse, but the baby wasn't mine. Upstairs, my daughter slept, her soft breaths filling the night. Whoever had sent that message wasn't talking about her. I wanted to believe it was a misunderstanding, a wrong number, anything but what it was. So I did what I had learned to do. I blamed myself. Maybe I was imagining things. Maybe it wasn't what it looked like. I tucked the phone back, swallowed the bile rising in my throat, and told myself not to jump to conclusions. The next morning, I couldn't shake it. At the bank, while Ethan was at work, I asked for a printed statement. My hands trembled as I unfolded it in the parking lot, scanning the rows of numbers. That's when I saw it. Thousands of dollars, transferred out in neat, regular amounts, into an account I didn't recognize. A name I didn't know. The paper crumpled in my fist as tears blurred the ink. He had been bleeding us dry, and I had been blind. That night, I listened more carefully. Ethan stepped outside to make a phone call, his voice low, but the walls carried sound. I pressed my ear against the window frame, my heart pounding as I heard words that weren't meant for me. "You don't need to worry, Olivia. I'll take care of you. She'll never leave. She doesn't have the courage." The world tilted under me. Olivia. The name burned into my brain like acid. So she wasn't just some faceless ghost. She had a name, a body, a place in his heart, and apparently in our finances too. And worse, Ethan's confidence was absolute. He believed I was too weak, too dependent, too afraid to ever leave him. I stumbled back, pressing a hand to my mouth, fighting the sob that clawed up my throat. Upstairs, my daughter shifted in her crib, whimpering softly in her sleep. I sat beside her, brushing a hand over her tiny fingers, and for the first time in years, I saw myself clearly. Not a wife, not a dependent, not the fragile woman Ethan thought I was. I was her mother, and for her, I would find the courage he believed I didn't have. As I held my daughter close, the truth settled in my bones like ice. The cracks had finally revealed the rot beneath. Ethan wasn't my protector, he was my captor. Olivia wasn't a stranger, she was the proof of my betrayal. And me? I wasn't broken. Not yet, but I would make sure that by the time this ended, they would be. The night I heard Ethan whisper Olivia's name, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, my heart pounding like a war drum. My body ached with rage, but my mind refused to rush into battle. If I confronted him now, he would twist it, deny it, make me feel insane again. No, this time I needed proof, and I needed patience. The next day, I bought a tiny USB recorder, no bigger than my thumb. My hands trembled as I slipped it into the inside pocket of Ethan's jacket before he left for work. Every step he took with that recorder was a step closer to the truth. When he came home, I quietly retrieved it and hid in the bathroom to listen. His voice filled the tiny speaker. "I miss you," he said, his tone dripping with tenderness. And then Olivia's laugh, breathy and sweet, followed by his promise. "She won't leave me. She can't. You'll have everything, I swear." The words tore through me, but they also steeled me. I saved the files, labeling each one with the date and time, building a fortress of evidence that even his charm couldn't break down. Soon I started saving emails, taking pictures of his phone when he carelessly left it unlocked, capturing messages filled with hotel reservations, transfers, and phrases like, "our little secret." Each file was a nail in the coffin he didn't know I was building. I hired a private investigator, a wiry man named Caldwell with sharp eyes and no small talk. He followed Ethan after work, snapping photos of him meeting Olivia, walking hand in hand like lovers in plain sight. The first time I saw them together, on my laptop screen late at night, the image crushed me. Ethan leaning down, pressing his lips to hers with a hunger he no longer reserved for me. My stomach lurched, bile rising, but I forced myself to save the image into a hidden folder. Proof. One night, after putting my daughter to sleep, I sat on the edge of her crib, stroking her hair. Her tiny chest rose and fell, each breath pure and untainted by the lies that poisoned my world. Tears spilled down my cheeks as I whispered, "I'll protect you, I promise." In that moment, the weight of the fight ahead nearly crushed me. But her small hand twitched in her sleep, brushing against mine, and I knew I had no choice but to fight. Days turned into weeks as my secret archive grew. I lived two lives, the obedient wife who smiled through dinners and the quiet warrior cataloging every betrayal. It was exhausting, like breathing two different airs at once. Every time Ethan touched me, I fought the urge to flinch. Every time he lied, I smiled as though I believed him. Inside, I was a volcano waiting for the right eruption. Then came the photo that changed everything. Caldwell sent it at midnight. My phone buzzed, and when I opened the file, my breath caught in my throat. Ethan and Olivia locked in a kiss in front of a high-rise apartment building. Olivia's hand clutched his arm, a shiny new key dangling between her fingers. The subject line of the email was simple: Condo, paid by him. My vision blurred as I stared at the glossy glass facade of the building. I had never seen it before, never even heard him mention it, and yet, here they were, playing house with my husband's promises and my family's money. I wanted to scream, to smash something, but instead, I saved the photo, filed it away with the rest. My war chest was filling, and soon I would open it. But evidence wasn't enough. I needed allies. I found one in Claire, a divorce attorney whose eyes carried the same shadows as mine. She had been through her own war, left bruised but unbroken. As I told her my story, she didn't interrupt, didn't pity me. She simply nodded, her jaw tightening. "You'll need to be careful," she said. "Move quietly, and don't give him any reason to suspect, you know." Her voice was steady, but her eyes burned. We were sisters forged by betrayal, and she would be my shield. I also opened a new bank account in secret, slipping in small deposits whenever I could. $50 here, $100 there. Insignificant enough not to raise suspicion, but each transfer was a lifeline, a seed of freedom. Each time I made one, my heart raced, as if Ethan could see right through me, but he never noticed. He was too wrapped up in Olivia's world of champagne and silk sheets. I confided in only one friend, Julia, someone I had known since college, who knew the girl I used to be before Ethan reshaped me. When I spilled the truth, she didn't gasp or cry. She leaned forward, her voice a sharp whisper. Don't attack him head on. Men like him destroy themselves if you give them enough rope. Let him hang himself. Just be ready to pull the lever. Her words sank into me like steel. Still, not everyone would be on my side. When Ethan's mother heard whispers that I was growing suspicious, she pulled me aside at a family dinner. Her smile was sharp as glass as she said, "A good wife doesn't snoop. If Ethan strays, it's because you're not doing enough. Don't embarrass us." Her words were venom, and I swallowed them in silence. To her, I was the failure, the unworthy wife, while Ethan was the golden son. But I didn't argue. I didn't need her approval anymore. Let them all think I was weak. Let them believe I was blind. Because in the shadows, I was sharpening my blade. Patience became my armor. By day, I was the same Amelia Ethan thought he owned, smiling at dinners, stirring soup on the stove, folding laundry while our daughter toddled at my feet. By night, I was a storm caged inside my own chest, every heartbeat rattling against the bars. I wanted to scream at him, to shove the evidence in his face, to demand answers, but Claire's words echoed in my head. Don't give him a reason to suspect. One wrong move and you lose everything. So I played the role. I laughed at his empty jokes. I nodded when he explained once again how complicated finances were, and when he left the room to answer his late-night calls, I bit my tongue until it bled. Inside me, anger built like lava, but I forced it to simmer, not erupt. There were nights when the mask slipped. After putting my daughter to bed, I sat in the rocking chair by her crib, my tears dripping onto her blanket. Her tiny fingers curled around mine even in sleep, as if she knew I was breaking. "I won't let you grow up in lies," I whispered. My voice shook, but the promise settled deep in my bones. For her, I would endure. For her, I would wait. Then, fate handed me another weapon. One afternoon, Ethan rushed out for a meeting, leaving his briefcase on the table. My hands hovered over it, my pulse hammering. Opening it felt like crossing a line, but lines no longer mattered. He had already obliterated every vow we'd made. I slid the zipper open and pulled out a folder. Inside was a contract, crisp and official. My eyes scanned the text, each word slicing deeper. Property transfer. Beneficiary. Olivia Harper. The room spun. He hadn't just betrayed me emotionally or financially. He was building a future with her in ink, in legal binding. My chest heaved, but instead of rage, a cold clarity washed over me. I snapped photos of the contract, slid the papers back, and zipped the case shut. By the time Ethan returned, I was calmly chopping vegetables for dinner, the knife steady in my hand, though my world had tilted. That night, lying beside him in bed, I studied his profile in the dark, the arrogance, the certainty, the unshakable belief that I was too weak to ever leave him. It all radiated from the rise and fall of his chest. He didn't even hide his secrets anymore because he thought I would never see. That arrogance would be his undoing. I began to observe him more closely, turning our home into a stage where I was both actress and audience. Ethan thrived on showing off. At family gatherings, he boasted about deals and investments, painting himself as the brilliant provider. He loved the spotlight, craved admiration, and when people applauded, he glowed. I took note of every word, every slip, every inflated ego trip. His pride wasn't just a weakness, it was a weapon waiting to be used. And Olivia, too, revealed herself more than she realized. She was addicted to showing off her victories. Her social media was a shrine to her vanity. Designer handbags, champagne dinners, selfies in elevators that gleamed with luxury. One night, scrolling through her feed, I found the post that twisted my stomach. A photo of her hand resting on her stomach, captioned simply, "Something beautiful on the way." The comments exploded with congratulations, hearts, baby emojis. But I wasn't convinced. I knew manipulation when I saw it. Maybe she was pregnant, maybe she wasn't. Either way, it was bait, designed to flaunt her supposed triumph over me. I didn't comment. I didn't even breathe a word of it to Ethan. Instead, I took a screenshot, adding it to my growing archive. Each night, I added to my journal, writing down their weaknesses in neat, ruthless lines. Ethan, arrogant, careless, drunk on his own power. Olivia, greedy, vain, desperate for validation. I underlined each word, red ink bleeding into the page like wounds. These weren't just notes, they were the map to their destruction. Still, patience was a knife that cut both ways. Some days it drained me, made me feel hollow, like I was vanishing into the role I played. There were moments I almost broke, when Ethan leaned over to kiss me before work, when he told our daughter he loved her as though he weren't gutting her future behind our backs. My rage swelled, begging to burst free, but each time I clenched my fists, swallowed the bile, and remembered Claire's warning. It wasn't easy, but waiting transformed me. I was no longer the wife who doubted her own instincts. I was a hunter, watching her prey circle, biding her time until the trap could spring shut. The irony was that Ethan thought he was the one in control. He strutted around, puffed up with confidence, certain his secrets were safe. Olivia flaunted her supposed pregnancy, feeding on the envy of strangers online. But they didn't know I was watching. They didn't know I was recording every slip, every boast, every careless confession. And they didn't know that patience wasn't weakness. It was power. The knock on the door was sharp, deliberate, the kind of sound that already carried arrogance before a word was spoken. When I opened it, Olivia stood there, framed in the doorway like she belonged in my house. Her eyes glittered with triumph, her hand resting casually on her stomach. "I'm pregnant," she said, her voice dripping with mockery. "And he pays for my luxury condo with your money." For a moment, the world tilted. My hands trembled, my breath hitched, but then, clarity. Instead of screaming, instead of breaking, I smiled. It was small, cold, the kind of smile that comes from knowing something your enemy doesn't. "Congratulations," I said evenly, letting my eyes rest on hers. "I hope you keep every receipt." Her smirk faltered just slightly, confusion flickering in her gaze before she turned on her heel and left. When the door closed, I leaned against it, my heart pounding, but not from fear. The time for patience was over. That night, after Ethan had fallen into his usual drunken sleep, I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop. Folder after folder of files opened before me. Voice recordings, screenshots, bank statements, photographs. Proof of every betrayal, every stolen dollar, every whispered promise to her. With steady hands, I packaged it all into a single file and sent it to Claire, my lawyer. Minutes later, my phone buzzed with her reply. "Amelia, this case could destroy him completely. If you're ready." I stared at the message, the words glowing against the dark screen. My reflection looked back at me in the glass, no longer the doubting wife, no longer the silent victim. I typed back, "I'm ready." The next morning, I moved swiftly. I logged into our joint accounts and shut every door he had left open. Transfers were blocked, cards frozen. Ethan's empire of control, the leash he'd kept around my neck for years, was cut in seconds. When he tried to pay for his morning coffee and the card declined, his face twisted in confusion. He muttered about technical issues, but the seeds of panic had been sown. By noon, Claire had filed the divorce petition, stapled thick with evidence of adultery and financial fraud. Ethan's name was scrawled across every page in black ink, the kind of ink that burned like acid when held under a courtroom's light. Olivia, too, wasn't spared. Her name sat neatly in the section listing potential witnesses and beneficiaries. She wasn't just the mistress now. She was a key piece of the puzzle, dragged into the spotlight she had never expected. When Ethan came home that evening, his steps were hurried, his face pale beneath the forced calm. He tossed his jacket on the chair and stared at me, eyes burning. "What did you do?" he demanded. I set the dinner table, my hands calm. "I think you know." His voice rose, desperate. "Amelia, listen to me. This isn't what you think. I made mistakes, but I love you. You're my wife, the mother of my child. Don't throw this all away." His words cracked, and for a moment he almost looked broken. Almost. But I had listened to those lies before. I remembered every time he'd told me I was imagining things, every time he made me doubt my own sanity, every time he used love as a weapon. Now those words were hollow. I looked at him, steady. "I'm not throwing anything away, Ethan. I'm reclaiming what's mine." He reached for my hand, his eyes pleading. "Please, don't do this. We can fix it. I'll end things with her. Just forgive me." It might have worked once. It might have cracked the old Amelia. But I wasn't that woman anymore. "Forgiveness?" I asked softly. "You mistake me for someone else." I pulled my hand away, leaving him clutching at air. The silence stretched between us, heavy, suffocating. Then, finally, he sank into the chair, his head in his hands. But I didn't feel pity. All I felt was a strange calm, like the eye of the storm had passed and the destruction was about to begin. Olivia had thought her announcement would crush me. Ethan had thought his apologies would bind me again. But they didn't understand. The game had changed, and I wasn't playing to survive anymore. I was playing to win. The day the papers were served, Ethan's mask finally cracked. Gone was the calm businessman, the charming husband. What remained was a man cornered, snarling like a trapped animal. He slammed doors, cursed under his breath, and glared at me across the house as if I had betrayed him, when all along it had been the other way around. Within a week, whispers began to spread. Ethan moved fast, spinning stories in every circle he could reach. Suddenly, I wasn't the betrayed wife. I was the unstable woman, the paranoid mother, the liar. He told colleagues, family, and even friends that I was suffering from delusions, that I had invented an affair to cover my own incompetence. "She's not well," he told people. "I'm worried about her. For the child's sake, I may have to take custody." The cruelty of it stole my breath. He wasn't just trying to protect himself, he was trying to take my daughter, the one piece of my life he hadn't already tainted. Every rumor he spread was a dagger aimed straight at my heart, and Olivia, always eager for her stage, joined in the performance. On social media, she posted a photo of her hand glittering with a diamond ring. The caption read, "Soon to be Mrs. Ross." The comments exploded. Congratulations, envy, admiration. She basked in it, her smile smug, her eyes shining with false victory. She wanted the world to see me as a discarded wife, irrelevant, forgotten. As if that wasn't enough, Ethan's family circled me like vultures. His mother called me one evening, her voice dripping with condescension. "Amelia, think of your daughter. This fight will only hurt her. Drop the case, let it go. Don't drag us all through this ugliness." His sister chimed in days later, cornering me at a family gathering. "You're humiliating everyone," she hissed. "If you cared about anyone but yourself, you'd walk away quietly." I listened, I smiled, and I said nothing. Then, one night, while I was putting away laundry, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number flashed on the screen. "He's planning to hide money overseas." My blood ran cold. The walls seemed to close in as I stared at the words. Someone was watching him, and someone wanted me to know. Whether it was a warning or a trap, I couldn't ignore it. I forwarded the message to Claire, and the next morning she dug deeper. Within days, we had proof. Ethan had begun transferring funds to foreign accounts, thinking he could outsmart the courts and secure a fortune for himself and Olivia. But the moment he made those moves, he walked into his own snare. Claire filed a motion, and the court froze his assets before the money could vanish. The blow landed hard. Ethan stormed into the house that night, his face red, his fists clenched. "What the hell did you do?" he shouted. I didn't flinch. I simply met his gaze and said, "You did this to yourself." He swore, punched the wall, and left, slamming the door so hard it rattled the frames. The fallout spread quickly. Word of his frozen accounts leaked, and soon a journalist friend of Julia's reached out. Days later, an article exploded online, detailing not only his affair, but also the shady transfers, the deception, the fraud. Ethan's name, once golden in the business world, turned to poison overnight. Meetings were canceled, deals dissolved. He was no longer the admired entrepreneur. He was a scandal. And Olivia? She hadn't expected her name to appear in the filings, hadn't imagined that her signature on certain documents tied her directly to Ethan's schemes. She tried to play innocent, but the law didn't care about innocence when evidence spoke louder. Suddenly, she wasn't just the mistress flaunting a diamond. She was a potential accomplice in financial fraud, her glamorous world collapsing under the weight of subpoenas and investigations. Then came the twist I never expected. At the next hearing, Ethan's sister, who had scolded me, who had told me to walk away, stood up in court. Her voice shook, but her words cut deep. She revealed records of Ethan pressuring her to help hide assets, messages where he mocked me, mocked all of us, boasting that Amelia is too weak to fight back. She turned her back on him and handed the judge a folder of evidence. For the first time, Ethan's confidence cracked wide open. I watched him, his jaw slack, his eyes wide as his own blood betrayed him, and I felt no pity. He had spent years building his empire on arrogance, greed, and lies. Now it was collapsing from within. The war was no longer silent. It was blazing, public, devastating. And for the first time, he was the one on the defensive, scrambling while I stood steady. The courtroom felt colder than any winter night, the air thick with tension and whispers. I sat at the plaintiff's table, my lawyer Claire steady at my side, while Ethan stood opposite me, his jaw set, his suit immaculate as though appearances could save him. Olivia sat behind him, a handkerchief clutched in her hand, dabbing at tears that I knew were rehearsed. The judge called for order, and Ethan's lawyer began his performance. "My client," he declared, "is the victim of a vindictive wife suffering from delusions. There is no proof of adultery, no proof of fraud, only paranoia." Ethan shook his head solemnly, as if he were the injured party. For years, he had been the master of twisting truth into lies, and for a moment, I felt the familiar ache of doubt. Then Claire stood, her voice calm but sharp as steel. She laid out the recordings, the bank statements, the photos, the contracts. One by one, the lies crumbled. Ethan shifted in his chair, his fingers clenching the table. Olivia buried her face in her hands, shoulders shaking as if the performance of grief could erase the evidence. But the moment that shattered everything came when Claire introduced the medical records. She slid them onto the judge's bench, her words ringing clear. "These records, obtained legally, confirm that Olivia Harper is not, and has never been, pregnant." The silence that followed was suffocating. Olivia froze, her face draining of color. The handkerchief slipped from her grasp and fluttered to the floor. The judge raised an eyebrow, scanning the documents, before fixing his gaze on Ethan. "Would you care to explain?" Ethan's mask crumbled in real time. His face flushed, his lips parted, but no words came out. Olivia stammered, I thought," before cutting herself off, her eyes darting like a cornered animal. The courtroom buzzed with murmurs, the spectators leaning forward like an audience at the climax of a play. I sat still, my heart steady for the first time in years. The truth was no longer mine alone. It was carved into the record, undeniable, irreversible. The judge's gavel struck the wood with a decisive crack. Ethan was found guilty of financial misconduct and adultery. Custody of our daughter was awarded to me. His assets remained frozen, his reputation dismantled. He was stripped bare, every facade torn down. As the court adjourned, Ethan turned to me. His eyes, once filled with arrogance, were hollow, desperate. He leaned closer, his voice a broken whisper only I could hear. You planned this all along. I met his gaze, unflinching. No, I said softly. You did. And then it was over. The days that followed were quiet, almost eerily so. For the first time in years, there were no shouting matches, no slammed doors, no cold silences designed to cut me down. Just peace. I took my daughter to the park, her laughter ringing out as she ran across the grass, free and unburdened. I sat on a bench, watching her, breathing deeply as if I had been underwater all this time and only now broken the surface. The world looked different. Colors were brighter, air was cleaner, and my shoulders felt lighter. I wasn't just free from Ethan. I was free from the chains of fear and doubt he had wrapped around me. One afternoon, Julia visited, her eyes glinting with the same fire that had kept me alive through the darkest months. You should tell your story, she urged. Women need to hear it. They need to know they're not alone, that they can fight back and win. The idea struck me with both fear and exhilaration. My pain, my war, my victory turned into something bigger than me, something that might light a path for others still trapped in silence. That evening, as I tucked my daughter into bed, she reached up and touched my cheek. Are you happy now, Mommy? She asked, her voice soft, innocent. I kissed her forehead, holding her tiny hand in mine. Yes, sweetheart, I whispered, more than ever. Later, standing by the window, I watched the city lights flicker against the night sky. I thought of Ethan, alone with nothing but the ruins of his greed. I thought of Olivia, her lies exposed, her empire of vanity reduced to dust. And I thought of myself, not as the woman they tried to break, but as the woman who rose again. When morning came, I laced my daughter's shoes and took her hand. We stepped outside into the crisp air, the world wide open before us. She looked up at me, her eyes bright with trust, and I smiled. From now on, I told her, my voice steady with a promise I knew I could keep, no one will ever control us again.